The Mockery, Normandy, June 1944. June 10th, 1944. A narrow country road near Villers-Bocage, France. The morning mist still hangs over the hedgerows, and the sound of distant artillery echoes through the valley. A German Tiger tank, its massive 88mm gun pointing lazily down the lane, rumbles forward. Inside, the crew laughs, confident, even bored. They've heard the stories. The Allies are rolling ashore with hundreds of American Shermans, light, flimsy, underpowered machines that burn at the first hit. Tommy cookers, they call them, a cruel nickname born from experience. Oberfeldwebel Karl Lutz, a veteran of the Eastern Front, leans back in his seat. "Another Sherman?" he scoffs. "We'll need a bigger scoreboard on the turret." But as the Tiger rounds a bend, his commander freezes. Ahead, just beyond a hedgerow, a shadow moves, low, squat, almost familiar, but not quite. Before he can react, a blinding flash erupts from the bushes. The Tiger's armor, nearly invincible to most Allied shells, is punched clean through. Flames burst from the engine deck. The unthinkable has happened. A Sherman has killed a Tiger. For the first time, the laughter inside a German tank turns to silence. The problem no one wanted to admit. 1942-43. To understand that moment, we need to step back 2 years earlier. In 1942, the Allies were facing a terrifying truth. Their main battle tank, the American-made M4 Sherman, was rapidly becoming obsolete. It was reliable, yes, easy to produce, easy to repair, but against the thick armor and deadly guns of the German Panther and Tiger, it was hopelessly outmatched. In North Africa, British crews had watched their shells bounce off enemy tanks like pebbles on steel. In Sicily and Italy, they suffered catastrophic losses trying to face German armor head-on. Behind closed doors, British commanders admitted what they dared not say in public: "Our tanks cannot kill theirs." Yet replacing the Sherman wasn't an option. It was the workhorse of the Allied Army, mass-produced, shipped across oceans, and depended upon in every theater. So the British began to think differently. If they couldn't build a new tank, they would reinvent the one they already had.
The impossible gun, the birth of the Firefly. Enter Major George Brighty and Lieutenant Colonel George Witheridge, two men with a wild idea. The British had just developed a powerful new anti-tank weapon, the 17-pounder gun. It could pierce a Tiger's frontal armor from over a mile away. But there was one problem. It was far too large to fit inside a Sherman's turret. When the proposal first reached Army headquarters, it was laughed off. The recoil alone, they said, would shatter the mounting. The breech was too long, the turret too small, completely impractical. But Brighty refused to give up. Working in secret workshops, he and a small team began stripping down the Sherman's interior, cutting away bulkheads, turning the guns sideways, and even moving the radio to a box welded to the back of the turret. Anything to make it fit. At last, after months of modification, they rolled out a crude prototype. When the 17-pounder fired its first test round, the entire tank shuddered, but held. The armor plate downrange was punched through cleanly, something no Sherman had ever done before. The impossible had become real. The Sherman Firefly was born.
The Turning of the Tide, Normandy, summer 1944. By D-Day, the British had converted hundreds of Shermans into Fireflies. To the untrained eye, they looked almost identical, but their long, menacing barrels gave them away to German spotters. Each British tank troop now carried at least one Firefly, the designated Tiger Killer. Crews knew to keep them hidden, camouflaged among ordinary Shermans until the moment they were needed. And when they were, the results were devastating. On June 13th, near Villers-Bocage, German Tiger ace Michael Wittmann ambushed a column of British armor, destroying more than a dozen vehicles. But later that same week, British Fireflies returned the favor. Lying in wait along a hedgerow, they knocked out Tigers one by one before the Germans even knew what had hit them. Witnesses described the shock on the faces of captured German tankers. One officer reportedly muttered, "The English have changed their toys." The Firefly had turned mockery into respect and fear. From fear to respect. The German reaction. As the campaign in Normandy dragged on, German reports began to note an unsettling trend. Panzer crews were ordered to target Fireflies first, recognizing the threat of the long-barreled gun. In some units, commanders even refused to engage unless they were certain no Fireflies were nearby. For the first time since 1940, the Germans were on the defensive, not just in strategy, but in psychology. The myth of invincibility surrounding the Tiger was crumbling. Letters from captured crewmen tell the story best. One wrote, "We used to laugh when we saw Shermans. Now we pray they're not the long guns." In the hedgerows of Normandy, the Firefly became a hunter. Allied soldiers began to believe they could finally face the Tiger, not with fear, but with confidence. It was a small victory, but a vital one. The balance of morale had shifted. Legacy of the Firefly. The realization. By the war's end, only a few thousand Fireflies had been built, a tiny number compared to the tens of thousands of regular Shermans. But their impact was immense. They proved that ingenuity could overcome fear, that adaptation could triumph over arrogance. When the surviving Tiger crews were interrogated after the war, many admitted they had learned to respect only two Allied tanks, the Soviet IS-2 and the British Firefly. The tank that began as a desperate experiment, mocked by both sides, ended as one of the most effective armored weapons of the entire conflict. And perhaps that's the real story of the Firefly. Not just a weapon, but a symbol of how determination and creativity can turn weakness into strength. Because in war, it's not always the biggest gun or the thickest armor that wins. It's the will to adapt when others refuse to believe you can.